drive. And we had a really awesome show last night on Taxation is Theft. In case you missed it, had the Alex Merced. Really, really interesting conversation. I learned a lot more about crypto than I thought I didn't know. That was really interesting. But we talked about something that was, I thought, pretty cool. Because I'm always pushing the idea that people need to... We need to have savings. We need to have our lives built on a solid foundation. We need to have full ownership of our homes. We shouldn't be in debt. We shouldn't have these monthly obligations. Because these are basically what force us into a life of servitude. Right? I mean, if you didn't have monthly bills, you wouldn't be so hard up for a job. And basic supply and demand is when more people need jobs, the supply is high, the demand is low, the dollar per hour or, per year salary, whatever, is low. But we were talking about what's going on now, and even though the government is inflating the currency like fucking crazy, because of the uncertainty, people are investing that money. And some of them are investing a little bit more wildly than others, but a lot of it's going into the stock market. A lot of it's going into Bitcoin. Bitcoin's almost $50,000 right now. Fucking insane. Man, I wish I would have bought $1,000 worth of it when I first found out about it. It was $12. If I had put in $1,000, I'd have, and I was gonna put in $2,000 actually. That was the plan. I just didn't have it at the time. I would have $4 million right now. No, $8 million. I think. Holy shit! It's really amazing. But we're not buying bullshit anymore. Like, we used to spend so much money on junk. And because of the uncertainty, people are like, no, we're going to save this. Which is funny because, actually, when this started, people were posting memes about, you're about to learn why your grandmother still reuses her aluminum foil. And it's true. I mean, these were very uncertain circumstances that my grandparents, maybe your grandparents or your great-grandparents, lived through, that made them very conscious about saving and giving everything a value, treating everything with it, that like it's extremely valuable, not wasting, saving money, spending less. And when I grew up, it really wasn't about that. There was so much around that it was easy for everybody to be competing for, oh, well, I've got a nice watch, I've got a nice car, I've got $100 shoes, I've got, it was insane. And I think that's going on a lot less now. I don't know, I could be wrong. But because a lot of people don't have work, or because they're afraid they might lose their job, well, let me just save the money, because if I lose my job, who knows what's going to happen. So it's a really, really interesting time. But of course, I think this is still part of the problem. We still have a lot of people who have a lot of debt. Now, what's good about inflation as inflation goes up, debt gets easier to pay off, right? So if you borrow $1,000 today, and tomorrow the dollar is worthless, well, hey, you can blow your nose and sell the tissue for $1,000 and pay off that debt, no big deal. Deflation, on the other hand, makes it harder to pay off those debts. And of course, when we think about earning the money that we're going to pay off our debts with, we usually think about our jobs, right? Our income, our wages. And those wages don't normally inflate or deflate with the currency, not as fast anyways. And it's interesting to see why. And it has to do with where the money is inflated or where the money's moved. So one of the things we were talking about last night, and for those who missed it, Alex Merced is he used to train traders on Wall Street. So he would teach them all the laws and regulations and everything. You can watch the podcast. It's on Facebook and YouTube, and it'll be up on the podcast tonight. For example, when the government comes up with one of these new lending programs, they want to make it easier for people to get into homes. What they're really doing is they're dumping a lot of money into one specific market, which is creating a market inflation. They're inflating just that one market because they're printing a bunch of money, but that money is only available in that one market. It's the same thing they do with student loans. It's the same thing they do with car loans. You can't just walk into a bank and say, hey, give me a loan for $50,000. In most cases, they'll do it for a car because it's collateralized. They'll do it for a house because it's collateralized, and also because the government's creating special rules and assurances. So when they lend money, it only goes into specific areas. And you'll see this too, interestingly enough, when I was learning about the stock market a long time ago, and I don't know how much this still applies, but you have different market sectors. So you have like one sector that's like energy, one that's like, manufacturing, one that's food, one that's commodities, etc., etc. And what will actually happen is investors, based on the news or the economy or whatever else, they all decide like, hey, we should get out of food and get into energy. And so they start taking all their money out of food and putting it into the energy stocks. And one stock, it's not like one stock is going down. An entire sector, an entire class of stocks will go down with the entire market, and an entire other class, a completely different market, will go up because the money is moving from one market to the other. And of course, that's all just imaginary because at the end of the day, the stocks don't actually change value. The companies don't change their operations for the most part. Money in equals money out, so it's not like you're putting money into the business. You're giving the money to another trader. And so the government has never really is that a word? Did I just say that? Like, the government has never really made money available for employees. If anything, they tax it and make less money available for employees. Now think about this. Let's say you run a business and you've got a budget of $100,000 to run your business. And you want to pay your employees $10 an hour. Well, at $10 an hour, it's really going to cost you $12 or $13 or $14 an hour because you got to pay taxes on top of that. Your employee ends up only getting like $7 or $8 an hour. So you're basically paying. Your employee's basically getting half of what you're paying him. But if you were to buy a machine to do that employee's work, the government will actually make it easy through like SBA loans to buy new machinery. So there's easier money available for the machinery, which of course drives the price up, but there's not easy money for the employee, which drives the price down. You're getting less value because the government's stealing from both of you, I guess. Your employees aren't going to be as happy because they're not getting what you promised them, it's not your fault, it's the government's fault. So their perceived value is less. They perceive that they're giving more to the company than they're receiving. And so we don't see that inflation, that same inflation in employment as we see with, anything else that the government gives special loans for. And this is really important because everybody's out there fighting for higher wages. Oh, we'll force people to pay more. And there was a report, this one's really interesting. There was a report that came out by the Department of Labor, because Biden's got a new minimum wage that he wants to enforce nationwide. Which, by the way, a federal government's minimum wage only applies to federal employees. As much as we've been convinced otherwise, I'm now convinced that's bullshit. And if you don't have a government-backed organization like a corporation or a licensed business or anything else, you don't have to play by that rule. But regardless, the report said that it's going to lift 900,000 people out of poverty. Which sounds great, right? Almost 1 million people are going to be lifted out of poverty. Of course, they're in poverty because of the government in the first place, but let's not talk about that for now. What they're not saying, and this is the media that's shoving this report down our throats, saying, oh yeah, 900,000 people are going to be lifted out of poverty because of the new minimum wage. What they're not saying is that 1.5 million people, almost double that, 1.5 million people are going to lose their jobs. Why is that? Now, what they're attempting to do is manipulate market prices by forcing people to pay more, but they're not inflating the market by injecting the money into that market like they have been with the other markets. So, the government backs all these loans for college tuition. They're putting money into the market. People can borrow the money to pay for the school. They're putting that money in, and all these people that have all this extra money are able to bid higher on what they're willing to pay to go to college. Imagine this. Imagine if the government came along and said, oh, I know that's bullshit, but just bear with me. These colleges aren't making enough money. We're going to make a law that says they have to be paid more. So if you want to go to college, you have to pay your college more. But here's the kicker. They don't put any new money into it. They don't give out more loans. Nobody's going to be able to afford that. Right? Nobody's got the money. They only have the money for it now because of the loans. And if the loans go away, who's going to pay for it? And this is the same problem we have in the labor market right now. People want to work for more, but the government is taking money out of that market. They're making it more expensive to hire people, while they're making everything else less expensive. Super important. Think about it, guys. Send me your comments. Send me your messages. If you disagree with me, let's debate. Debate me, you coward. Go to taxationistheft.info. Look for the link, Debate Me, You Coward. And we'll get you on the show. We'll have a conversation. All right, guys. I'll catch you later. Taxation is theft.